Welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump's impeachment by the House of Representatives came as no big surprise, but the next step in the process has taken an unexpected twist.
The Senate is prepping for a trial in the new year. What could put a hold on the process? Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson explains.
The Senate is preparing for an impeachment trial in the new year, but an unexpected twist could put those plans on hold. After getting the votes, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is waiting to confirm if and when she will turn the articles over.
Clearly, do you understand, when we see what their process is, we will know who and how many we want to send over.
Pelosi claims she wants to ensure there will be a fair process in the Senate, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell suspects another motive for the hesitation.
It looks like the prosecutors are getting cold feet in front of the entire country and second-guessing whether they even want to go to trial.
President Trump accused Pelosi on Twitter of being afraid to present it to the Senate. Senate Democrats want 4 witnesses to come forward: Mick Mulvaney, Robert Blair, John Bolton, and Michael Duffy, witnesses the White House blocked from testifying in the House.
We ask, is the president's case so weak that none of the president's men can defend him under oath?
But McConnell prefers no witnesses and hopes to move quickly, acquitting President Trump.
This particular House of Representatives has let its partisan rage at this particular president create a toxic new precedent that will echo well into the future.
While enjoying a degree of bipartisan support against impeachment, President Trump took heat from both parties Thursday for taking a shot at late Michigan Congressman John Dingell. Recounting a conversation with Dingell's widow, he implied the World War II vet who served 60 years in the House might be in hell.
Maybe he's looking up, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
A move CBN News chief political analyst David Brody warns could cost Trump in Michigan, a state he won by 0.23% in 2016.
He needs every single vote to win this battleground state of Michigan. And let's be honest, if I could use this intellectual word, dumb comments by Donald Trump, unforced error.
Congressman Dingell's widow, Debbie, who now serves in his old congressional seat, says as she prepares to spend her first holiday season without her husband, Trump's hurtful words make her healing that much harder. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Well, as we've long suspected, the whole impeachment seems to be political drama. And now it's going to be drama that's going to be extended. At the start of this whole thing, it was just assumed it would never get through the Senate. And so this is kind of a curveball. It will never get to the Senate. This will be something that will be debated again and again and again and again, all the way until November. And then we have this wonderful thing that our Constitution calls for, a presidential election. Which is where all of this should be in the first place. Why the articles of impeachment, the whole process of impeachment has been weaponized as a political tool. Will that echo in generations to come? Probably. We've seen extreme partisanship in our nation today. And whether it's on the conservative side or the liberal side or whatever side, can we ever come together and actually govern ourselves? There's a big ticking time bomb of our national debt going off, and we're spending time in drama. We need to deal with these things and deal with them quickly, but we can't even seem to get together to have a, well, how do we govern as opposed to campaign? In other news, calls for impeachment kicked off the Democratic presidential debate last night, but the candidates soon turned on each other. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. 7 Democrats running for president faced off yet again last night. The PBS NewsHour Politico debate came just weeks before the Iowa caucuses. The candidates started in agreement, calling for the president's removal, then quickly turned to contrasting themselves and diminishing their opponents.
The mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine. Think about who comes to that. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president.
According to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire. So if this is important, this is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass.
Democrats will debate 4 more times between now and the end of February. Meanwhile, progressive Democratic candidates are coming under fire for socialist proposals like Medicare for All. Younger generations, including Christians, are open to considering socialist ideas. Some even asking, was Jesus a socialist? CBN's David Brody brings us the story of one influential conservative who's determined to change young minds.
What about
Charlie Kirk isn't making many friends on liberal campuses these days, and he's okay with that. 7 years ago, he started Turning Point USA, the country's largest conservative student organization. He shows up regularly on college campuses to help educate uninformed students.
Do you think Lenin was a good guy?
Yeah.
You think Lenin was a good guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the 1 million people he killed was like a rounding error?
He killed millions of people.
He killed 1 million people.
Okay, yeah. I'd like to see proof of that. But yeah, sure.
Well, you could read the Gulag Archipelago and first-hand accounts of the mass extermination that Lenin put in place.
Charlie Kirk tells CBN News these campus visits are true eye-openers.
I went to Brown University recently, a place that is filled with atheism, secularism, leftism, Marxism, all this stuff. And I said, your rights come from God, not government. The place erupted in laughter, not in boo. Wow. Laughter.
But the rise of socialism is no laughing matter. Nearly 50% of millennials and Gen Z would actually prefer to live in a socialist country.
By the way, have you heard Jesus is a socialist? I don't know if you heard that.
No, that's nonsense. I hear this all the time.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I saw that.
I'm happy to debunk that, too. Well, the fact that Jesus was anything except the savior of the world is preposterous to me. He's one of the only people ever in documented history to have such a widespread impact outside of political government influence. So even if you look at Napoleon, look at Muhammad, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, they worked through the instruments of government. Jesus was like, that's not why I'm here.
The reason Kirk says he's here is to make sure younger generations fully understand the Judeo-Christian principles that founded this country. He, along with Jerry Falwell Jr., have established the Falkirk Center at Liberty University to do just that.
They're not being taught true appreciation for America's role in the entire Christian journey. America has played a beneficial and critical role in spreading the gospel in ways that never could have been imagined before America.
Right now, America is going through painful moral changes. Church attendance is down. Atheism is on the rise.
There's a reason why atheism is growing. Number one, I think it's a failure of the church. I think the church has not been bold enough. Number two, I think it's a byproduct of government getting so big, replacing the church. We've surrendered that terrain, if you will, to big government programs and statist programs. And traditionally, the church was always this first social safety net.
Kirk preaches his message to a robust following on social media, and his influential organization has caught the attention of President Trump as well. As a Bible-believing Christian, Kirk is determined not just to spread the good news fight, but also to engage forcefully with the other side when necessary.
The hatred that we receive as Christians, it's biblical, it's prophesized, and you shouldn't try to make excuses for it. No matter what, we're going to be persecuted. I'm afraid right now it's coming to a culture where the likes of which we've never seen before. And we as Christians have to rise up. We as freedom believers have to rise up. And I'm just trying to do my part.
David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, David. The United States is upping the ante against Iran. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announcing new measures to compel the regime to stop its human rights violations. Last month, Iranian security forces reportedly killed hundreds of protesters, including children, for rallying against higher gas prices. Pompeo says the United States has been monitoring various other rights abuses, numbering in the tens of thousands.
3 women handed out flowers on the Tehran metro on International Women's Day in March. They weren't wearing the hijab. The regime sentenced them to between 16 and 23 years in prison for propaganda against the state and for moral corruption.
Pompeo lists 3 initiatives to pressure the regime to change: redesignating Iran a country of particular concern for religious freedom, Sanctions against 2 judges whose rulings routinely violate human rights, and visa restrictions on officials responsible for persecuting Iranian citizens. Well, in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing the most serious challenge to his leadership in recent memory. He's not been able to form a government after 2 general elections this year, and now he's under criminal indictment. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell looks at the challenges as Israel faces a 3rd historic election in less than a year.
On December 26, more than 100,000 Likud party members will be eligible to vote on their leaders. Gideon Sa'ar is challenging Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, to represent Likud, a position that puts the winner in line to become prime minister.
So Gideon Sa'ar has long been known to be someone who wishes to challenge Netanyahu for many years, and he is quite popular amongst much of Likud, but really not enough, it seems, according to the polls, to take out Netanyahu, the incumbent leader and the prime minister. And the polls seem to currently suggest quite consistently that the Sa'ar insurgency will be serious, but it's hard to see how he can win the primaries.
Sa'ar has warned if party members don't choose him over Netanyahu, Israel is headed for a left-wing government. Israeli expert Eugene Kontorovich disagrees.
All of the polls show that no matter who wins these primaries, it seems the results will be the exact same, which is that nobody can still form a coalition.
The Jerusalem Post's Herb Kynan sees politically driven troubles facing leaders like President Trump and Netanyahu as the new norm. Kontorovich said there are similarities and differences in the cases.
There's a sense in both cases that the establishment, the legal establishment, has not been exactly fair with both leaders, but they're also quite different. So Trump is not in fact facing indictment. As a matter of fact, in America it's quite clear that you cannot indict a sitting president. He has to be removed by impeachment first. He is being impeached, which is not a criminal proceeding, whereas Prime Minister Netanyahu is indeed facing criminal proceedings.
Kontorovich believes the U.S. administration is frustrated with Israel's political stalemate.
The great shame is that Israel is wasting perhaps the world's most valuable political resource, which is Trump time. So Israel now has the single most favorable American administration it has ever known, which has already changed the diplomatic map and the diplomatic rules for Israel in ways that were unthinkable previously.
Regardless of the primary, the March 2nd general election will make history as the 3rd time in less than 12 months that Israelis will vote in national elections. Unfortunately, the prospects of either side building a coalition government don't seem any more likely than the last 2 attempts. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Thanks, Chris. And Gordon, a writer in the Jerusalem Post, called this Netanyahu's to be or not to be moment.
Well, I'll be bold enough to predict Israeli politics, which is really difficult to do. They have so many different political parties and different factions. And in that parliamentary system, how do you get a majority and then how do you form a government? Right now, they're essentially tied at a little over 30 seats in the Knesset apiece. And, you know, Gantz has said, I'll never form a government with Netanyahu. So what that means is we're going to continue this stalemate. So in the next election, my prediction is Netanyahu will still lead Likud. And we'll still end up with a tie. And what happens then? Well, what happens is the current government stays in power. And under the Israeli Constitution, even if Netanyahu is under indictment, even if he's convicted, he is not removed as prime minister until all appeals are finally exhausted. As I understand their legal system, that could be 5 to 7 years from now. So if there's a stalemate, the end result of that is Netanyahu stays in power. That's a very unusual outcome, and they can have 3 elections a year for the next 5 years, and where do they go? But the bottom line will still be the bottom line. Netanyahu stays in power.